Hello, everybody, and welcome to this lecture on biochemistry, the second lecture of this unit. Now, today we're going to learn about carbohydrates and lipids. Now, remember, for regular bio students in my class, you got to get at least 70% of the questions right during this lecture. Otherwise, you're basically just watching this for fun. Honors, you guys got to get at least 80% of the questions correct. So, today's daily objectives are: first, we're going to identify the monomers which make up both carbohydrates and lipids. And then, after today, you should be able to describe the functions of carbohydrates and lipids within living organisms. All right, I hope you enjoy it. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another exciting edition of Ed Puzzle Lecture Notes. Remember, this is your lecture. In college, that's what professors do. They lecture to their students. If the students don't show up to the lectures, they probably don't learn. Same thing with you. If you don't watch the videos and take notes, you probably won't learn either. Remember, you need 75% or higher to get credit on this assignment. 75% on the questions. So here we go. We're going into organic chemistry. And organic starts with this element right here called carbon. If you watch some sort of movies, like science fiction movies, they say us humans, us animals here on Earth, are carbon-based life forms. Because without carbon, nothing can be alive on Earth. We need this very useful element that can do a lot of things. It's got the atomic number of 6. That's its atomic number. Now, all that means is carbon has 6 protons in the nucleus. 6 protons. Does not necessarily mean that it has 6 neutrons, but it has 6 protons. And it has also 6 electrons that are flying around. So remember, electrons fly around the nucleus, those negatively charged electrons. So carbon has 6 electrons as well. But carbon, that is like the most important element when it comes to living things. All right, so organic. There's several different definitions of organic. If you Googled it right now, you'd probably find 5, 10 different definitions. But this is going to be my definition. Is it 100% the best? I don't know, but this is what we're going to go with. Organic compounds are made mostly of carbon and hydrogen, so C and H, and it usually is part of something living or it came from something that was living. So if you have a pet, if you have a cow and the cow goes to the bathroom on the ground, that can be used as fertilizer. That would be organic fertilizer because it has a lot of carbon in it, has a lot of hydrogen in it, also has nitrogen, but it came from something living. So that's what organic is. Now, we went over that carbon is really, really important element when it comes to us living things. We would not be alive without carbon. It has 4 valence electrons. Remember, those are the outer shell of electrons. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 electrons in its outer shell. It has 2 in its inner shell, but remember, those don't matter when it comes to bonding. It is this outer shell of electron right here, the valence electrons, that allows it to make bonds. Now, what you really need to know in this class is that carbon is very, very useful when it comes to living things. Carbon is like the element that can do it all. So, when it comes to living things, those of you guys that did the molecular models with the balls and the sticks and the springs, carbon can make single bonds. That's when you use the sticks. It could also make double bonds. That's when you use the springs. Or triple bonds. And that's when you use the springs as well. So this element right here, carbon, is very versatile. It can do a lot of things. It can make a lot of shapes. It can make very, very long chains, molecules that are really long chains. It could also make rings, like with glucose. It actually makes a ring with the carbons bonded together. It can also make branch chains, so chains with other elements branching off of it. So carbon is very versatile. It can make a lot of different shapes. And that's what allows us and life on Earth to exist because of this element right here called carbon. Alright, so now on to the important stuff, the things you're going to need to know. We're going to start with monomer. And we're going to compare monomers to this thing right over here that hopefully you guys know what it is. That's a Lego. Now, kids my age, we played with Legos because we didn't have the cool video games that you guys have now. We had Legos and we would build stuff. So in this unit, we're going to be talking about 4 organic macromolecules. Well, those giant molecules are made from littler molecules. They're made from monomers. They're made from Legos. So the monomers are the small units. If you join them together, if you bond them together, you make a larger molecule called a polymer. So the monomer is like one individual Lego. Now, whatever you build with all those Legos, so I don't know, maybe you build a house or something. So if you build a little house and put a little roof on it like that, that entire house, that would be a polymer. That's a large macromolecule. So macromolecule and polymer basically mean the same thing. Now each of those little bricks, those little Legos that you use, those are the monomers. Those are the small units that are used to make the larger polymer. So monomers are the small units that you put together to form a polymer or a macromolecule. And this term won't be that important, but polymerization, that is the process of turning these individual monomers, these little blocks, and combining them, bonding them together to make something. So that's polymerization. Taking each of those monomers and putting them together to form a polymer or a macromolecule, that's polymerization. Another way you can think about it is a chain. Each link in the chain would be a monomer. Each link in the chain would be a monomer, but the entire chain would be a polymer or a macromolecule. And the process of making that chain, that's polymerization. And now a little example. So we have a polymer called starch. If you've ever eaten French fries or potato chips, that has a lot of starch in it. That is a carbohydrate. That is a polymer or a macromolecule. It's a very, very long molecule. It's even a lot larger than this. You know, it keeps going and going and going. It's very, very large. Now, what is it made of? All it is a bunch of glucose. That's a sugar. A bunch of glucose monomers. That's a glucose. Bonded to another glucose. Bonded to another glucose. Bonded to another glucose. Bonded to another glucose. And on and on and on and on. So each of those glucose, those are the monomers. Those are the little Legos that if you put them all together, it makes the polymer or the macromolecule of starch. So in this case, the monomer is a sugar, glucose. Some of you guys made that with the molecular models. And if you put a bunch of glucose together, you get the polymer or the macromolecule called starch. Okay, so in this unit, we're going to learn about 4 organic macromolecules, and here they are. Today, we're only going to go over 2. We're going to go over carbohydrates, carbohydrates. Today, we're also going to go over lipids. Lipids are things that most of us, we call them fats, but they're a little different, lipids. We're going to go over nucleic acids. And the last one we're going to go over are proteins. So these are the 4 organic macromolecules, or the 4 polymers that we're going to go over. Okay, so the first organic macromolecule, or the first organic polymer we're going to go over is called carbohydrates. Carbohydrates. Now, that's like the large molecule. That's a big molecule. What is it made of? What are the smaller molecules that it's made of? Well, it's made of sugars. That is the monomer that if you put a bunch of sugars together, you get a carbohydrate. So the sugar is like each individual Lego, and the carbohydrate is what you make out of the Lego. Do you make a house? whatever. So the carbohydrates, the big molecule that you make from all the little Legos, the little sugars. All right, chemical component, don't worry about this too much, but it's made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Hopefully you remember that glucose is C6H12O6. Well, hey, that makes it a carbohydrate. Now here's what you need to know. Other than what's the polymer, what's the monomer, what's the function? What is carbohydrates? What do they do for us? That's what you need to write this. It is the primary source of energy for all living things. Carbohydrates is the primary source of energy. And now some other specific carbohydrates. Starch, that's how plants store their energy. Energy storage for plants, that's why like potatoes, French fries, very high in starch. Glycogen, that's how us animals, other than fat, that's how we store our energy. And then there's also cellulose, and that's what makes up the plant's cell walls. That's what makes up like most of the plant that is just like for its structure. But just to be clear, what you need to know, carbohydrates is the polymer, the macromolecule. They're made by bonding a bunch of sugar molecules together, like that one and that one and that one. You keep bonding a bunch of sugars, you get a carbohydrate. And also know what its function is. Its function is the primary source of energy for living things. Alright, so just like you guys, I'm going to take some notes too. So this is what my notes would kind of look like. So carbohydrates, remember that is the polymer. That is the polymer or the macromolecule. That's the large molecule. Now what are the individual units, the little small Legos, which make carbohydrates? Do you remember? Hopefully you do. If not, put it in your notes. Sugars. You put a bunch of sugars together, you get carbohydrates. What is the function? What is the main function of carbohydrates? They serve as the main source of energy for living things. If your notes just have that, good job. You're doing a good job. All right, so the next organic macromolecule or the next organic polymer are the lipids. Remember, we're going to have 4. This is number 2. This will be the last one for today. So lipids, that's the large molecule. Now, what are the little guys? What are the little Legos that you have to put together to make a lipid? Well, there's 2 of them. It's fatty acid and glycerol. Those are the monomers. Those are the little subunits that when you put them together, you get a lipid. Now for me, it's good to know the chemical components. It's made of mostly carbon and hydrogen, but if you look right here, there's a little tiny bit of oxygen too. You ain't going to need to know that in my class. What's the functions? All right, so long-term energy storage. So people like me, I have a little bit of fat around my waist. That's my body storing energy for the future. I wish it would stop doing that, but it does. Here's the main one. I'm going to put this in yellow. Boom. Lipids are what make the cell membranes, like the covering around each of your cells. So here's one right here. That's a cell membrane. So around every one of your trillions and trillions of cells in your body, it's lipids that make up like the barrier around your cell. So these little tails in here, in the inside, I shouldn't use yellow. But those little tails in there, the inside of your cell membranes, those are made of lipids. So your cell membranes are made of lipids. Alright, so cell example. The only thing you need to know is lipids make up your cell membranes. That's what you need to know. I'll put a little star right there. Definitely make sure that's in your notes. The examples of lipids, oils, fats, and waxes. And these are food examples, but these are the 3 you need to know. These are the 3 real types of lipids that are made. Oils, fats, and waxes, and of course butter as well. And here, this is a triglyceride. So this right here, fatty acid, made of carbon and hydrogen. Fatty acid chain, carbon and hydrogen. Another fatty acid chain made of carbon and hydrogen. And this little yellow thing right here, that's the glycerol. So you need to know, lipids are made from the monomers, glycerol, which is right there, and fatty acids, which are right there. And the last slide, once again, these are my notes. I'm taking notes just like you. Hopefully you're taking notes too. I don't know. Lipids. Remember, that is the polymer. That is the large molecule. It's also called a macromolecule. What's the monomer of lipids? Hopefully you remember. I'm going to ask you right now. Let's see if you get it right. All right. Hopefully you put the monomer of lipids is fatty acids and glycerol. And what's the function? What do lipids do for us? Well, they do a lot of things, but what you really need to know, they make up your cell membranes. They make up the outer border of your cell. So if this is your cell, and that's like the nucleus, and you got a bunch of other stuff that's inside your cell, hopefully you know about that stuff. Boom, right there. That's the cell membrane, which is made of lipids. All right, thank you for listening. Hope you took some notes. Hope you understood it, and I'll talk to you next time.